Today we have Dan Hundycz, creator of DPH Games, where they've come up with great games like Psychological Warfare, Cats, and Cash Me If You Can. Great games. But now he's done it again with his new game, Affliction. Tell us a little bit about it, Dan.
Well, Affliction Salem 1692 is a game about the Salem witch trials, and it is a worker placement game with a little bit of engine building and engine disruption built in. That's the main mechanic. Thematically, what it's about is the witch trials and its family rivalries. You're trying to arrest certain families you have issues with, and you're trying to protect other colonists that you are loyal to. There are no actual witches in the game, so you're going to use accusations to reduce people's reputations to make them easier to arrest. And there's a variety of other actions you can take in that battle, I guess you'd call it.
Okay. So, with the new game, what was the inspiration behind it? I mean, why Salem?
I'm trying to remember back to all of the things. I know a couple of the things that triggered it were, one was a Netflix show called Salem, and I started watching that, and then it kind of went off the rails with casting spells, and they use the actual people's names, but Cotton Mather is kind of like a good guy in the TV show, and Cotton Mather was not really. So wanted to do something a little more historically accurate. And then there's a couple other games about Salem, but they all have actual, you're looking for real witches and you're trying to hunt real witches. So this was a little different take on it. So I think there was like a couple of things that happened simultaneously that brought this together, but I remember the Netflix thing being part of it. Probably those other games probably had something to do with it too.
Right. So, I mean, with that being said, and what the game is centered around, did you ever consider how people with ancestors from that time would feel, and how do you feel it represents them?
While we were developing it, I hadn't considered that too much. A little bit, but as we went on, I was actually here at the Great Escape Adventure store, and I had this box sitting somewhere while we were playing another game, and a young woman came up and saw the box and said, "Hey, what's that about?" And I gave her the 8-second spiel, and she said, "Can I give you a hug?" And I'm like, "Okay," and because she was a direct descendant of Martha Carrier, and so we really tried to treat all the people in there with respect. So in the game they have colonist abilities, and all the abilities try to reflect as closely as you can in the game the real people and what their role was in that society at the time. So hopefully what you're doing is kind of replaying that period in time, and there's different outcomes, and different people might get arrested than actually did. Different people may become more influential than actually did, but they're all. I should say all the people in the games were people in the Salem area.
Okay. I mean, I honestly think the game is great. I've played it with you a couple times. It's awesome. This game it's honestly super great. Affliction is an amazing game about that era, and I think it depicts it extremely well. Not all about the witches, what it really was about. I mean, that's great.
Yeah, I think there's, like I said, there's a number of actions you can choose, but the permutations and implications of those actions are fairly intricate in terms of strategy. And so there's a number of counter actions to anything you do, and so it does feel a bit like an epic battle as we're trying to, I'm trying to protect certain people, and you want to arrest those same people, and it's not a shoving match. It's well, I'm going to go over here and do this, and you're going to accuse here, and I'm going to protect here, and you're going to use spectral evidence there. Right. And so it's a little bit more like a boxing match, I guess, in a 2-player game. In a 4-player game, it obviously blows up in a whole bunch of different ways. So, yeah, I've been very happy with that piece. It took us a while to get Fear to work the way we wanted it to do, and so
I definitely remember that, all the conversations about
we tried it a number of different ways,
yeah.
And what we settled on in the end here, I'm very happy with, which is when you bring people into your circle, you can use their abilities and they generate influence, you can build a machine. And what fear does is it allows you to disrupt other players' machines. And so I think that's a fairly unique. Can you have something that's fairly unique? No, it's either unique or it's not. So I think that's something that really adds to the interest of the game.
Okay.
I don't want to say that no other game does that, because I'm sure there's one somewhere.
Okay. Well, actually, so we have a couple of questions from the gamers that are local around here, actually, for you, if you don't mind answering a couple questions. So one of them actually asks, how long have you actually been making games?
So when I was 6...
Wow.
No, I did make some in elementary school, but so let's see. I did some computer games. So back in 1983, I had a K-Pro 64K machine with 5 1/4 inch floppy disks, and created a baseball game that, for the time, was actually really good, but no way of distributing it. A adventure game that took me 6 months to beat because of the way it populated the cells throughout the game, and there was a space one, and I think all this stuff's like black and white, and so that I actually got like laser beams to move on the screen was impressive.
Do you still have any of those?
Well, at the time I bought my computer, all the experts said that MS-DOS would never make it because it uses too much memory. So I bought a CP/M machine, and MS-DOS kind of evolved into this thing you may have heard of called Windows. So the platform that all that stuff was written on, I didn't have a way of porting it over, and I don't think I own a 5 1/4 inch floppy disk anymore, so I don't know where that stuff is. And it's black and white, archaic now anyway.
It's still fun to play classics though.
That's true. This would be a classic. So then I was a counselor for years, and we used to do a couple of things there. One was a summer project where kids would stay at the school for 3-4 days, and the last day they'd do an overnight space journey. So the science teacher and I would program 4 computers. So one was navigation, engineering, science, and communications, and I did navigation and engineering. And there was no networks back then, so codes would pop up that everybody would have to type in their computers, and some of them would just do nothing, just so you wouldn't. Every time a code came up, you would figure, something's going to happen. Well, some of them were just dummy codes, so we, programmed this whole space journey and stuff. Never thought I'd need algebra. Man, I was doing arctangents and all this crazy stuff to get that to work. And then more so, which applies to gaming, was we did crime scenes every year for the college biology class. Okay. And so we'd murder a mannequin, and kids would have to go through and if you broke a glass, the glass broke. If there was blood spatter, there was we went through the murder with the mannequin so that all the evidence would be as accurate as possible. Yeah. Fast forward to about 2013, friend of mine, kids had a geocaching themed birthday party. So it's January in upstate New York. No way to hide stuff in his backyard without him just following the tracks in the snow. So I said, I'll just go online and buy a board game about geocaching, and there wasn't one. So I got out the cardstock, and the intent was never to really do anything with it, just have it for his birthday party. And at the party, he and I are the only geocachers. Everybody else is board gamers, and they were like, this is pretty neat. You should do something with it. So we started going to gaming conventions and trying it out, and it really evolved from kind of a more towards the Monopoly-ish style game to what it is now. And so we played it with more non-geocachers than geocachers in developing it. And so from that, we started the company. So it was all kind of an accident.
Right. So with that, so there's another question people ask. What is it that inspired you to make games? What was the point at which you said, this is what I want to do from now on?
I think it wasn't a deliberate decision that I said, this is what I'm going to do. It was, fell into that with the geocaching game. I've always enjoyed, making games, playing games. There's a whole long, boring history of the games I played. So the geocaching game, I mean, I also work in an office where there's a number of different people that we all rent desks, and they do very different things. And so the marketing sales guy was like, I said, well, there's 6 million people that geocache, and there's not a board game about that. And his eyes got all big, and he's like, oh, let's do this, you know. So that's kind of what started the company. And then I thought, well, what else do I know? And I was a counselor for years, and so psychology was something that I knew, and that led to the development of psychological warfare.
Right, okay.
Cats kind of started as a joke, and the Corning area gaming group guy walked by, and we were talking about it, and he says, well, you could all play cats in the backyard. And I don't remember who said it now, actually. And I was like, oh, that might be something. And Patrick, Pearl, and Jeremy Pearl came over to the office one day, and that one was just crazy. In about 2.5 hours, 80% of that game was created in that moment. Wow. And then we evolved and changed some other things afterwards.
Yeah, that's awesome. So another question, what is the most challenging part that goes into making a game, would you say?
Well, the most challenging part is not making a game, it's selling a game. So
okay.
That's the piece that's, I don't think I knew heading in. I don't know. To me, so I was on a panel a year or so ago at LilCon in Buffalo, out north of Buffalo, and we were on a panel, and that question got asked, and all three of us had 3 different answers. So, and the guy next to me was like, "Oh, that's actually the easiest thing for him." So for me, I think the most challenging part is the rule book, because people can read things in many different ways. I tend to speak verbosely, if you haven't noticed, and so the rule books are not really good for that. Right. So I think that the rules part is actually a challenge for me. The game designer next to me was saying finding enough playtesters. He loves writing the rules. And I can't remember what the third guy said, but for me it's the rule books.
That does seem like something completely, because you're right, a lot of people understand things a totally different way. I mean, when I play games, the same thing, we'll always have an argument, well, this means this means that. So I definitely think that's probably the most challenging
if you
part,
look at Cash Me If You Can, in that rule book, which is the first one I did, it's 95% verbiage. Yeah. And as you look at Affliction, that one is, you got pictures all over the place. Yeah. So, and realize that really need to, as I watch people look at a rule book and what they do is like, well, these word things don't matter. Okay, I need these cards, this card, that card. Yeah. And so they don't want to spend their time reading rules. And so the more you can give them pictograms, the better, I guess.
Right, okay. So out of all your games, which one is your favorite?
Probably, I don't know. I used to say psychological, people would always ask me that and say, you can't answer that. And I'm like, sure I can. And I used to say psychological warfare. But as Affliction has evolved, it's gotten much more, there's just so little luck in Affliction. And you can go back and look at what you did in turn 3 and say, yeah, I should have done this. Yeah. Or in turn 12 and say, oh man, if I'd done this. So I do like that part. I do still enjoy it. I probably have played psychological warfare, 800,000 times, and it's still replayable. And cats every once in a while, it's just a fun little light game, so that one's okay. And Cash Me If You Can, I just haven't played in a while, oddly enough. So, because that is our oldest game, and we've been out intensely promoting this one. So, but Cash Me If You Can is more of a gateway, higher luck game.
Okay, yeah. To be honest with you, I love Affliction. I think out of all your games, I think I like Affliction the best.
I've heard that a lot.
It's awesome. I like it. It's really great. So before we leave, just one last question. So, I'd like to know any advice you have for people out there aspiring to be game designers just like you.
So when I started, I wrote Steve Jackson an email, and he actually wrote back. And I'm in this office with all these people that don't know gaming, and I'm like, Steve Jackson just wrote me back, and one guy's like, isn't that like, no, wasn't he a football player? Like, well, there was anyway. So I called a friend of mine, and he put his wife on speakerphone, and she squealed, and I'm like, that was the response I was looking for. But anyway, the thing I asked him basically that question, and his response was playtest, 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 playtest. And with different, I would expound upon that by saying with different people, with we have a regular group that comes and playtests. They're going to have they do try different styles and stuff, but they tend to have certain styles, and you kind of evolve where you play things sort of a similar way, and then you take it to a whole other group, and they approach this thing in a way you just never anticipated, and does it break the game? And so you need to really do that with a lot of different groups of people, different ability levels, different philosophies, and there's some people that are really good at breaking games, and they're great. I mean, they're the ones that you don't want someone to say, oh, that was fun. I don't really ever want to hear that. I want to hear, here's my problems, or I want to buy it.
I want to buy it.
And because there's a gap between that was fun and I'm going to separate you from your money to purchase a game.
Okay.
So, there's unpub events around, which are unpublished games, and you'll get game designers going to those, and they're the best people to play with because they understand they need to be critical. Normal people try to be polite. And you don't have to yell and throw things at me, but you could just, to be honest, I didn't like this part. Right. And then I evaluate whether that is your preference or if that is actually a problem in the game.
So basically just playtest, playtest, playtest.
That's the major thing.
Yeah, and then just be honest and give real criticism.
Yeah. The other thing is you need to answer the question, what makes this game unique? Because there are a lot of games out there.
There's a lot of games.
And so, why is your dungeon crawl different than the other?
Than another dungeon? Yeah, definitely.
How many ever there are?
Like 50,000 or something?
Yeah,
like
I don't know.
So.
Yeah, that's about it.
So, before we go, Affliction, it's on Kickstarter right now, right?
Right now until February 19th.
February 19th is your last chance to go help Affliction on Kickstarter. And what do they get when they do money on Kickstarter? What do they get?
Oh, they get my undying appreciation, which isn't that really enough?
The goals and stuff.
Okay. Yeah, you get games.
You get games.
So you expect me to remember all these. At the $29 level, that's the base game, and all the Kickstarter backers will get a historical guide, which I could have in my hand and show you, but it's somewhere across the room. Historical guide which goes through kind of the history of Salem witch trials, and each card, more about each of the cards that are there. You also, it's going to get thrown at me here in a second. Yep. You also get, there's a mini expansion pack of, it's going to magically appear here. Look at that.
Oh my gosh.
So yeah, this is
magical drawers.
Yeah, so anyhow, if all that was worth that, it's a saddle stitched little booklet of 12 pages. Okay. Gives you some more information about the witch trials. And and then there's a mini expansion pack of 9 cards that'll come with all the Kickstarter games. This smaller book is $45, and so it's kind of see if I can knock everything over. It's a heavy duty, I don't know what it's made out of. Somebody asked me if it was wood. I'm like, it's not wood, but it's some poly something.
Yeah. That's like the special edition?
Yep. And then there's a larger box, which is a $60 one. Nah, it's all right. You don't have to toss that at me. And there's a DPH Games collection where you get this, Cats and Psychological Warfare. Technically, it's Cats, a sad but necessary cycle of violent predatory behavior. Can't believe you couldn't remember that name.
Oh, I know. It's so easy to remember.
Yeah, it's just like Cash Me If You Can.
Just like Cash Me If You Can. It's not Cash Me Outside, by the way.
You'll know what I'm
Can.
talking about after this video. And there's a store level, and then there's a couple other levels, but they're all closed out now. So I won't talk about those because you can't have them.
Okay. Well, we'll have to thank you a lot for coming today. Thank you so much, Dan.
Thanks, Hunter.
Yeah, I mean, it's great talking to you, man. And everyone, remember to keep your adventures great.